Scientists have recently discovered Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages under a medieval castle in Italy. They followed a newly found 15th century sketch by the creator of the Mona Lisa and found one of the unexplored architectural wonders from the age of the Renaissance. Construction of the Sforza Castle started back in 1358, but it was destroyed about a century later during a local crisis. Then, in 1450, Francesco Sforza, the Duke of Milan, decided to rebuild it on the old ruins. After he passed away, his son Ludovico took over and kept improving the castle. He brought in some of the best artists of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci, to decorate its walls. We can still see Leonardo's frescoes today in the Room of Wooden Boards. While he was working at the castle, da Vinci also recorded some historical underground passages hidden beneath the outer wall. The drawing, dated between 1487 and 1490, was found at the Institut de France in Paris. The sketch is highly precise, and it proves that Leonardo was really interested in fortification design and was great at documenting existing structures. Historical records show that Ludovico ordered the building of an underground passageway that led straight to a basilica, where his wife was buried. Ludovico married Beatrice in 1491, and they had a happy but tragically short marriage, as Beatrice passed away while giving birth in 1497. The Duke locked himself away for weeks, grew a beard, and wore only black clothes while he was mourning his beloved wife. The secret tunnel may have stretched over a half a mile and would let Ludovico visit her grave in private. It could have served as an escape route if the castle was ever under siege. The existence of the tunnels remained one of the mysteries of the Renaissance for years, as no one knew for sure they were there. But now, scientists finally uncovered the secret history. They used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to build up an accurate 3D model of all the structures under the castle. They found the tunnels da Vinci alluded to in his drawings, and it looks like they may have only been a small part of a whole system of historical underground passages. The goal is to create a complete digital twin of the castle that will not only show all the preserved constructions, but also the ancient ones that are no longer visible. They also plan to add augmented reality to the virtual paths to let visitors discover Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages. Now, we don't know if the genius actually took part in constructing the hidden passages that scientists recently discovered, but we do know about some other Leonardo da Vinci inventions. He created the first satellite-like map in 1502, long before photography or satellites were even a concept. A famous figure in Italy, Cesare Borgia, invited Leonardo to a small town called Imola, near Bologna, to create a highly detailed map for him. Back then, maps were not very precise, as no one had figured out how to show exact distances on a smaller scale. Instead, people spent a lot of time decorating them with dragons, roses, fancy castles, mountain ranges, flowers, and other artistic details. These maps look more like beautiful paintings meant to be displayed, rather than practical tools for navigation. But Cesare Borgia wanted something truly functional, and Leonardo managed to create something revolutionary in the field of cartography. If you compare satellite images of Imola today with Leonardo's map, the similarities are striking. He captured every alley, curve of the streets, roadways, and even the exact sizes of the buildings. And he did it all by hand, using just a pencil, ruler, compass, and several of his own clever inventions. To gather all the necessary data, the genius walked through the streets for weeks using a large wheel that spun as he moved, recording the distance with a cable. Using the magnetic compass, he determined precise directions. He also developed a tool called the bussola, which measured angles inside a circle. With this, he could track the exact turns of each street and the size of the intersections. He figured out the distances between houses and major roads. Then, back at home, he used his notes and calculations to draw the map to scale with incredible precision. In his work, Da Vinci also used a technique developed by Florentine humanist Leon Battista Alberti. He created a mapping method where you could place an entire city inside a circle using polar coordinates. At the center of the city, 8 straight lines met, representing the main directions of a compass. Leonardo used this system to divide the town into 8 sections. He didn't overlook even the smallest buildings, which made his map one of the most advanced of its time. The Italian genius had a big dream to build a machine that could let people fly. He studied how birds, bats, and kites move through the air and designed a special flying machine. He believed that if he could copy their movements, humans might be able to soar like them. Da Vinci's design looked a lot like a bat, with two large pointed wings that stretched over 33 feet wide. He planned to build the frame from lightweight pine wood and cover it with raw silk to make it strong but not too heavy. The person flying it would lie on their stomach on a wooden board in the center. To make the wings flap, the pilot had to pedal a crank with their feet, which was connected to a system of rods and pulleys. There was also a hand crank for extra power and even a headpiece to help steer. As the person moved their hands and feet, the wings would flap and twist, just like a bird's. But there was one big problem. Humans aren't strong enough to make the machine lift off the ground. Even though it might have worked once in the air, there was no way for a person to get it flying on their own. Leonardo probably realized this, but his amazing idea still inspired flying machines that came centuries later. Da Vinci was way ahead of his time with many of his inventions, but his idea for a humanoid robot was especially futuristic. He was working under the patronage of the Sforza family, the one that had those ancient tunnels of Italy built. The genius designed a mechanical knight that could move its arms, turn its neck, and even open and close its mouth. Da Vinci had good knowledge of anatomy and the mechanics of body movements that helped him. His unusual creation used an external system of cables. A hand crank set it in motion, and there was also an internal gear-driven mechanism. About 450 years later, Da Vinci's detailed sketches of the robotic knight were rediscovered in the 1950s. Several researchers tried to recreate the robot from those sketches. In 2002, a roboticist who developed systems for NASA and Lockheed Martin took inspiration from the old notes and built a functioning model of Da Vinci's robotic knight. Another design Leonardo created for Duke Sforza was a special kind of bridge that could be taken apart and carried easily. It was made for defense forces who needed to cross rivers or moats while traveling. This bridge would swing across the water and land on the other side. It had wheels and used a rope and pulley system, so it could be set up quickly and packed away just as fast. To keep it steady, it even had a special weight to help balance it. Leonardo wrote in his notes that the bridge was light yet strong, and he designed several bridges like this for the Duke. One of his other designs was a bridge that could be built very quickly, and the defense forces would move across multiple rivers. As scientists continued to study Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages, they reveal new chapters in human history. Who knows what other unexplored architectural structures they will find? Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you maybe wonder, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travel's just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE, and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak temple complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Ra. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Sakara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of 2 main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Tsigansia Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of two megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Tsigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Tiridates I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, you've just finished your sightseeing tour of Edinburgh, Scotland. It lasted just under an hour, and you're hungry for more. You ask your guide if there's anything else to see, and they start talking about a mysterious underground city. You ask how long it takes to get there, and you're shocked by the guide's answer. You're standing on it. It's right under your feet. South Bridge? But you were just there and didn't notice a giant arrow pointing down. So this is where the mystery starts. The story begins in the mid-1700s. The Scottish capital wasn't as big as it is today. Only 60,000 people lived around Edinburgh Castle. All of them were packed inside medieval walls, and they say today's cities are overpopulated. Get a load of the living conditions back then. The buildings were tall, so there was little natural light. Some houses had 14 stories. Cows walked the narrow winding streets, and livestock. Things were so bad that the famous English writer Daniel Defoe noted, "I believe that in no city in the world so many people have so little room." Yep, that's the guy who wrote Robinson Crusoe. Well, something just had to be done. The solution was to build two long bridges to the north and to the south of the city. The names they gave the bridges were more descriptive than colorful. The bridge to the north was completed first. In 1785, construction on the second bridge got underway. It was going to connect the main pedestrian street in the north with the university buildings in the south of Edinburgh. But don't think of this construction as a modern bridge over a river. It was more of a viaduct, a type of bridge that connects two hills across a valley. The word viaduct comes from Latin, as Romans were pioneers in building these structures. Their capital was built on 7 hills. And just to be copycats, Edinburgh also straddled 7 major hills. Only 2 are visible today because the city has been built up. Now, back in the 18th century, the construction of the South Bridge was a remarkable feat of engineering. It took the builders only 3 years to complete it. 19 stone arches spanned a chasm that was 31 feet at its deepest point, and the length over 1,000 feet. Impressive, even for today's standards. But what does a 2.5 centuries old viaduct have to do with an underground city? Well, it is the city. You see, they designed Southbridge to be hollow on the inside. As you walk along this street today, there is actually a huge human-made cave beneath your feet. The popular name for this set of chambers is the Edinburgh Vaults. But what was the purpose of this space? And is there something or someone there now? Well, let's take it one step at a time. The builder's original intention was for these vaults to serve as merchant shops. At first, it worked out fine. Merchants used a total of 120 vaults as shops and warehouses. There were workshops, cobblers, and taverns. But as time went by, a major design flaw came to light. The stone was leaking, and the vaults were damp all the time. There was even flooding. The builders forgot to waterproof the structure. The merchants feared the water would damage their precious goods. After just a couple of years, the first tenants started moving out. Once legal trade moved away from the vaults, the city's poor moved in. And not only them, but all sorts of shady characters. Historians don't know much about this period, since there are no written records. But even the squatters had to leave soon. If you couldn't do business in these vaults, how could you live in them? It was damp and cold, and there was no ventilation, sanitation, or natural light. It really stunk. Every real estate agent's worst nightmare. Just 30 years after their completion, the Southbridge vaults were abandoned once and for all. But at a street level, business was as usual. The officials decided to fill the vaults with rubble for security purposes. Buried and forgotten, the memory of a once teeming merchant quarter of Edinburgh slowly faded from people's minds. Now, this is where the story gets a bit weird. During the 1980s, a Scottish rugby player accidentally found a tunnel leading into the vaults. The athlete didn't waste any time and started excavating the vaults with the help of his son. Several tons of rubble, and a decade later, the Southbridge vaults have been restored to their former glory, so to speak. They were again dark and damp as they were back in the 1700s. There were many interesting finds in this underground city. The vaults were littered with oyster shells, which were the standard diet for a working-class resident of Edinburgh at the time. Other finds, such as shoes and empty bottles, suggested that people actually lived in these claustrophobic vaults. Think of this the next time you see someone trying to rent their garage as an apartment. So, your guide was right. There really is a hidden city under the streets of Edinburgh. Well, at least one street. You have now gone down from the main pedestrian street into Cowgate. You look up and there it is, the only visible arch of the once impressive bridge. You are now searching online to book a tour of the vaults. You just have to see this place with your own eyes. But the Scottish capital isn't the only city with a mysterious underground. The historic region of Cappadocia in central Turkey hides no less than 36 cities beneath the ground. The biggest and the most impressive one wasn't discovered until 1963. It was built during the Byzantine era to protect the local population from invaders. We have similar structures made out of concrete in our cities, but the level of the Turkish underground city is really impressive. There are several levels, like in a multi-story car garage. The caves and tunnels lie 197 feet underground. That's 2/3 of the Statue of Liberty's height. The city could house 20,000 people at any given time, complete with livestock and food. The smell. Anyway, 20,000 is the average attendance at Major League Soccer matches today. You might want to add a field trip to one of these places the next time you go to Turkey. Most of these cities in Cappadocia can be found in rural areas. Makes sense, right? After all, they were dug out as hiding places. But in Europe, there is one city whose underground labyrinth resembles the vaults of Edinburgh. You've probably heard of Pilsen in the Czech Republic. But hold on a second, this isn't going to be a story of the most famous local product. Something brewed, perhaps? It's the story of a medieval city that survived underneath the streets of Pilsen. Water wells, cellars, and passageways stretch for more than 12 miles. Merchants and craftspeople use Pilsen's historical underground for storage. Water, food, ice, you name it. The waterworks are pretty impressive. Historians estimate that 360 wells are located under Pilsen's historical town center. In times of instability, the passageways served as safe havens for the locals. They definitely didn't go thirsty down there. Today, most tourists visit these mysterious underground cities. But in Canada, there's one where people live and work. The construction of Montreal's underground city began in 1962. The initial idea was to shelter traffic. That's a nice way to say that city officials were building a metro station. The idea caught on, and the project expanded. Now, it's a real-life urban maze hidden under the downtown area. Need a place to stay? There are hotels down there. Want to grab a bite? Step into one of the underground restaurants. Multiple shops, a library, cinemas, the list is long. There are even residential complexes. But how can people live under the ground? Simple. Although the city itself lies beneath the earth, the access points are at ground level. You can enter the 20-mile-long tunnel network at more than 120 places. Oh, that's another place down under. Oops, sorry, Australia. Ah, the desert welcomes you with challenging conditions of abandoned environments and extreme temperatures. Hey, some of us would prefer dessert, chocolate over sand and rocks. Oh well, just like cactuses and camels, buildings have had to adapt to these conditions. Here are some examples of astonishing structures in deserts. These structures are called earthships. They're located in a New Mexico desert town. A large community of like-minded people lives in them. What's even more interesting is that the location of these buildings is registered as dumpsters. Maybe it's because all these structures are made out of old tires, bottles, and cans. Earthships operate using green building principles. About 40% of a typical earthship is built with natural or recycled materials. Imagine the walls made up of hundreds of used tires packed with dirt. Then there are layers of floor-to-ceiling passive solar windows. They gather the sunlight during winter and reflect it in the summer to keep the structures at a reasonable room temperature. You can see plants in corridors and glass bottles or aluminum cans stuffed inside walls. Certainly a distinct house in many ways. Mike Reynolds is an architect who noticed the alarming waste and consumption levels in the 1970s. He designed a fully sustainable home out of cans back then. Almost 40 years later, he becomes the one who brings together all the other earthshippers. Reynolds drove a Mercedes, but it ran off of the vegetable oil he picked up at fast food restaurants in town. A standard 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom earthship costs about $250,000 in this town. Yet there are earthships like Dobson House that can cost as much as $1.5 million. If you do it yourself, with family and friends, you can eliminate the cost of labor, and it becomes relatively less expensive. Let's assume you're really going to build one. Where can it be? Well, anywhere. Earthships currently fit in the cold, dry air of Canada, as well as the hot and humid climate of Haiti. This is the Mirage Mirror House. It's an installation set in the Southern California desert. Mirage opened in 2017 as part of a contemporary art exhibition. It's composed of mirrors. This minimalistic structure blends with the environment around it. The doors, windows, and openings have been removed to create an amazing experience. What you have in the landscape is reflected back to you. How's it made? With mirrored surfaces. At night, the distant lights refract from the mirrors. In the daytime, the sky is transformed into banks of clouds. There's no fixed scenery in this house. How about seeing a futuristic structure in the deep desert? Architects designed a concept home that pairs perfectly with Elon Musk's Cybertruck. The house has a post-apocalyptic theme. I mean, when I say post-apocalyptic, it's because I can't say it. Anyway, the house is designed to survive in a disaster scenario. The cyber house has steel gates, the windows are armored, and the exterior walls are made out of super strong material. Modern house is controlled by an autonomous geothermal heat pump. To put it in less sci-fi terms, you can keep the internal temperature steady. This sleek house has an entrance that can fit the Cybertruck. After all, it's inspired by it in the first place. Plus, the Cybertruck can be lifted to the second floor to be more secure. This is King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center in Saudi Arabia. Basically, it's a laboratory in a desert. It was designed to demand minimum energy. The architecture has patterns on the walls and ceilings, giving reference to the local tradition of geometric form. The next stop is Swartberg House in South Africa. This one is located near the Swartberg Mountains, but don't get too excited. It's on the edge of the Great Karoo Desert. It's a 4-bedroom apartment. It has a special temperature regulating system. The system works like a shield from the heat in the summer and as a sun trap in the winter. You're looking at the Grand Mosque of Djenné in Mali. This mosque is 52 feet tall. This is impressive because it's made of only sticks and a special mix of mud and other natural elements found in the desert. Petra is an ancient city hidden in the Jordan Desert. The structures are carved directly into red, white, and pink-colored sandstone cliff faces. It's located among the canyons and mountains near the desert. The place was a trade center many years ago. You might already see pictures of the impressive facade of the treasury. This structure still holds many mysteries in it. For starters, scientists can't explain how the Nabateans managed to create such a structure thousands of years ago. Did you know that there's another mysterious place in the middle of the desert that has a similar structure to Petra? Median Saleh was like a second capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Yet another secret they left for us to decipher. It has over 100 decorated tombs and more than 1,000 non-monumental graves. Plus, inscriptions and cave drawings are also here, again surrounded by sandstone. This wooden shack was a post office once. The structure is in the Tengger Desert of Mongolia. It's surrounded by nothing. Sand is the only thing that accompanies the lonely structure. The building is only 23 square inches. As you can guess, it didn't get too many visitors. It was abandoned for over 35 years. Its fate changed one day when a woman discovered the building. Mrs. Zhang and her friend came up with an idea. They were going to reach businesses and people who wanted to send letters and postcards from the world's loneliest post office without actually visiting the place. It worked. The post office rarely gets visitors in place, but it's busy online. Over 20,000 letters and postcards were sent from the Desert Post Office in December 2021 alone. The place is about 6 miles off the nearest road. A post truck picks the letters up and hits the road for delivery. Eventually, they are shipped all over the world. A second destination in Saudi Arabia is King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture. The building has an interesting design. It took nearly a decade to build this complex structure. It's a 321-foot-tall tower which stands out with its look. Stone Matters Pavilion is a stone structure in Palestine. The structure spans a surface area of 93 square inches. It has been built entirely out of 300 interlocking stones that mutually support each other. The concave roofs, and yes, they look like giant bowls, are designed that way to collect rainwater. The structure is in Iran. Interestingly, in Iran, the evaporation rate is 3 times faster than the world average, so this bowl-like design comes in very handy. It captures the water in a way that the water can form a single mass as a whole before it evaporates. The outer shell of the roof system collects rainwater, but it also works as an additional shading. It makes air move freely, designed like a cooling mechanism for both roofs. Eco Lodge in Egypt is the next stop. The project is built in a place that overlooks the desert and is constructed using locally available materials like sun-fired bricks and palm wood. The building is an example of traditional architecture. There's a water basin that lets in the air to keep the interior cool. A worthy mention is the CID Interpretation Center in Chile. Chile's Atacama Desert is among the top tourist destinations in the country. To help the tourists, architects designed a visitor center as part of the infrastructure for the wind farm. Here, the cold winter months don't freeze people because the large windows make the most of solar heating. What's even more interesting is that the building is designed to go completely dark at night. Imagine you somehow bumped into the building by accident. Black Desert House is a building respecting the stars. At night, this house goes completely dark. It dissolves into the night, so the stars can appear more prominent. Now, any mysterious desert buildings you know that aren't on this list? Let us know in the comments.
I bet you've never heard of the legendary oasis of Zerzura. This ancient city is said to be hidden somewhere deep in the Sahara Desert, and its discovery could mean unimaginable riches and untold secrets. According to an anonymous 15th century Arabic guide, the key to unlocking the city lies in the beak of a bird carved on the city gate. Zerzura might not be as popular as Machu Picchu or the pyramids, but that just makes it more mysterious. Legend has it that Zerzura is built around this big oasis somewhere in the desert west of the Nile. Apparently, it's made out of white stone and has all these luxurious houses and gold decorations. The story goes that a scribe wrote down the account of a traveler who stumbled upon Zerzura while looking for his lost camel. At one point in his journey, the man got caught up in a sandstorm, where he got separated from the rest of his group. The traveler kept wandering in the desert for days, and then, out of nowhere, two men showed up and guided him to the city of Zerzura. The traveler described this city as an oasis filled with little birds and made out of pure white stonework. The city is also said to be guarded by giants. In 1835, an English Egyptologist named John Gardner Wilkinson mentioned the city in one of his books. He spoke to a man from Egypt who found the city by accident after days of wandering through the desert. He mentioned some ruins, unusual stonework, and a large oasis surrounded by palm trees. The man even gave some instructions on how the city could be found, indicating that it might be in the western desert of Egypt. But here's the kicker. Even though a group of explorers went out to find Zerzura, they didn't succeed. At the same time, they did stumble upon a bunch of previously unknown oases. In the early 1900s, numerous expeditions were sent to find the city, including one with a fleet of Ford Model A trucks. But, alas, none were successful. Others say Zerzura did exist at one point, but not anymore. It's possible it was swallowed by the desert. It's believed that back in the day, the Sahara Desert was actually green. Scientists even found traces of ancient rivers that flowed through the area 100,000 years ago, creating green corridors across the desert. But Zerzura might have never been real to begin with. Maybe it only existed in the minds of people, a figment of their imagination as they were struggling in the African desert. For thousands of years, people have been obsessed with the hunt for another lost city, Atlantis. But if this place really existed, where on Earth, or under the sea, could it be? According to Plato, Atlantis was an actual place, and it was supposedly located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Strait of Gibraltar. But how did this mythical city become synonymous with a perfect, paradise-like society? Well, you can thank Ignatius Donnelly for that. The American writer published a book in 1882 where he outlined 13 hypotheses about the existence of Atlantis. Donnelly truly believed that this lost city was where ancient humans lived in peace and joy for centuries. Donnelly even thought that Atlantis was the original source of many ancient civilizations around the world. And if we just followed Plato's clues, we could totally find Atlantis. Sounds like a treasure hunt, right? What inspired Donnelly to go on this quest in the first place, you might ask? Apparently, an amateur archaeologist discovered the city of Troy, using Homer's The Iliad as a guide. Well, if Troy was real, then why not Atlantis? Back in the day, some people believed that America was the legendary Atlantis. Columbus really stirred up some excitement when he brought back news about the New World to Europe. But the real hunt for Atlantis didn't really start until the 20th and 21st centuries. Some people tried to connect the dots between a volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini and the destruction of Minoan settlements. But in 2018, a team of investigators claimed they had nailed it, announcing they had discovered concrete proof that Atlantis had existed. What was their evidence, you ask? A series of mysterious circles in a national park in Spain. But the circles turned out to be nothing more than experimental ponds for studying zooplankton. Let's face it, there's no real evidence that Plato's lost city of Atlantis actually existed. But it doesn't make searching for it any less exciting, does it? The Fountain of Youth isn't a lost city per se, but it is another mythical location that many have claimed to have stumbled upon over the years. Long ago, people were obsessed with the idea of living forever, or at least extending their lives as much as possible. Each culture had its own wild story, like the Greeks talking about a magic fountain that let people live longer, or Alexander the Great finding a river of paradise that could heal the wounded. Japanese legends spoke of hot springs that could make you young again, while the Caribbean locals talked about the restorative powers of the water in one of their own mystical lands. Explorers searched far and wide for these magical waters, but nothing. Probably the most famous of all was the story of the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, who thought he'd found it in Florida. Now, Ponce de Leon was quite a character. He sailed with Columbus and became an important figure in the area now known as the Dominican Republic. He found gold in Puerto Rico and even became the island's administrator. But when the ruler of Spain decided to replace him in his duties, he got upset and decided to explore Florida, looking for gold and the elusive Fountain of Youth. He explored the Bahamas, but sadly, he didn't find any gold or magic water. He did, however, make his way to Florida. He explored the coast and even discovered the Gulf Stream. Unfortunately, his last expedition didn't go well, and he was wounded. But the legend of him searching for the Fountain of Youth lived on. Even though historians don't think he was really looking for the Fountain of Youth, thousands of people visit the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park every year to try the sulfur-smelling water. It's the oldest attraction in Florida, which has been around since the 17th century. Some say the water has unusual properties, but I'll leave that up to you to decide after you visit this place. Norse mythology has its own mysterious land called Thule. It's said to be somewhere between Scandinavia and Iceland, where the sun barely shines and the cold bites hard. The folks there survive on a diet of millet, herbs, fruits, and roots, washed down with a grain and honey brew. As for its exact location, scholars can't seem to agree on it to this day. The legendary ancient Greek explorer Pytheas was said to be the first to stumble upon Thule during his quest for tin mines. He sailed his way up north, passing by Scotland, and after 6 long days of sailing, he reached Thule. The people there, according to Pytheas, were quite primitive, but that's no surprise since they were just simple farmers living off the land. They showed Pytheas where the sun set on the shortest day of the year. They also told him that in winter, the sun never rose at all, and in summer, there was no night. For many years, historians have been debating the true identity of this mythical land of Thule. Some say it's Iceland, while others claim it's Norway. A little bit of progress has been made recently with the help of a team of researchers. If their findings are correct, Thule might be the elusive island of Smola. That's farther south than any of the Norwegian islands that were on the list of contenders. It may be too soon to celebrate, but it does look like Thule has finally been found. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to walk on diamonds, head straight to the town of Nördlingen in Germany. It seems like a typical fairy tale village with cute houses and red roofs, but its walls and streets are actually studded with over 72,000 diamonds. You'll need a microscope to see them, but they're definitely there. When the first people came to live here, somewhere around the 9th century CE, they were positive they were settling down in a volcanic crater. They didn't know the stone they were using for construction was embedded with millions of tiny diamonds, and the origins of the crater were out of this world. An asteroid slightly larger than half a mile in diameter hit our planet around 14.5 million years ago in what is now Bavaria and left a crater 16 miles wide. The bedrock was under such intense heat and pressure that the bubbles of carbon inside transformed into tiny diamonds at a concentration like nowhere else in the world. The locals didn't pay attention to their houses, built of what was left of that asteroid impact, shimmering on sunrise. Then, in the 1960s, 2 geologists arrived from the USA, studied the landscape from a distance, and noticed it didn't look exactly like a volcanic crater. After further research, they realized their theory that the crater was shaped from above and not from below proved right. They even had to change school books after the discovery, not to mislead the students. Once the word of the crater had spread, NASA got interested in it and sent their Apollo 14 and Apollo 16 astronauts to visit it to learn about what kind of rocks they'd find in space and which of them were worth bringing home. A moon rock that arrived with one of the missions is now on display at the local museum, and astronauts still visit the place. The locals, though, are so used to living among diamonds, they don't even find it special. The Australian town of Coober Pedy is known as the opal capital of the world and exists completely underground. The town even has the first 4-star underground hotel in the world. The reason people settled in this area was to work at an opal mine. Back in the day, the miners could hardly survive under the burning desert sun, so someone decided to put a tent directly into the mine. Then it turned into a home. Now, Coober Pedy has around 2,500 residents from different countries, about 30 shops, an opal gallery, museums, a bar, and other buildings, and is a popular tourist attraction. The town of Monowi, Nebraska, in the USA, has a mayor, a clerk, a treasurer, a librarian, a tavern keeper, and a bartender. Yet, the population is officially just 1. Elsie Eiler has been doing all those jobs, paying taxes to herself and voting herself for mayor since 2004. Back in the 1930s, Monowi had a population of 150 people, grocery shops, and restaurants. When farming conditions got worse, people started leaving family by family until it went down to 1 person. If you feel like saving some money on house construction, look up some property in the Spanish town of Centenil de las Bodegas. 3,000 residents live under and into the sides of the Cadiz Mountains and use them as natural walls and ceilings. The first settlers moved in here back in prehistoric times. The rocks keep the houses cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Neft Dashleri in Azerbaijan was built as an oil platform in 1940, directly in the Caspian Sea. Once they discovered rich oil deposits, it started growing and is now made up of a network of platforms with around 5,000 people working and living here. The town has apartments, bridges, a library, a community center, and even a movie theater. The Japanese village of Nagoro has an unofficial second name, the Scarecrow Village. The last children were born here over 20 years ago. It officially has less than 50 residents, but it feels complete thanks to 350 life-size human dolls. When a local lady came back here in 2000 to look after her aging father, she saw the empty streets, shops, and schools. To change that, she and her friends started making cute dolls to replace the residents. The entire town of Whittier, Alaska, lives under one roof of a 14-story building of a former barracks. That's around 220 people who live here all year round, plus all the shops, a police station, a post office, a hospital, and a church. The locals are mostly working in commercial fishing, recreation, and tourism, or for the state ferry and railroad. The idea behind having everyone and everything in one place is to save money on heating in the always cold climate and let the people do all their business inside. This way, they don't have to face the unbearably strong winds. There's a town in Svalbard, Norway called Longyearbyen, where the sun sets on October 25th and doesn't rise again for the next 4 months. When it rises again in spring, the locals gather on the step of an old hospital at 12:15 to welcome the sun and celebrate its return. Then, it doesn't set for over 4 months. It happens because of the way the Earth is tilted on its axis. The sun only rises and sets once each year at the North and South Poles. Longyearbyen is the northernmost town in the world, so it gets affected by that. Its residents occasionally see polar bears and reindeer in the streets and get around on snowmobiles. The Italian village of Viganella was built right at the bottom of a deep valley and on the wrong side of the mountains. They cast huge shadows and deprived the village of the sun for the entire winter. The locals used to live like that for centuries, until one engineer decided to build a large mirror high on the opposite slope of the mountain. It's operated by a computer and reflects light on the central square of Viganella for at least 6 hours a day during the darkest months. Santa Cruz del Islote in Colombia is one of the world's most crowded islands, with around 600 residents in a 2.5-acre area. Fishermen built this island on a coral platform over a century ago. They chose it because of its beautiful location and the absence of mosquitoes. The families of the original settlers were growing, and most of them never left the island. You'll only find people with 6 different last names living here. When the family needs extra space, they just add an extra floor to one of around 100 homes in town. Now it has a school, shops, a church, and 1 restaurant. There is no traffic, since the streets aren't wide enough for cars or trucks, and the distances are perfectly walkable. No one on the island locks their doors, because everyone knows each other, and there hasn't been a single crime. Another place where people don't lock their doors is the Shani Shingnapur village in India. In fact, local homes and even shops don't have front doors, keys, and locks, but locals never feel unsafe. Residents believe their village is under the protection of Lord Shani, who will punish anyone who tries to steal something. A legend says that around 300 years ago, after heavy rain and flooding, the locals found a huge rock. The same night, Lord Shani appeared in the dreams of the village head and promised to protect the village if they kept the rock in the village unsheltered. The deity would live on the rock and oversee the village. Once the first bank opened in the village, they added a glass entrance and a barely visible electromagnetic lock with a remote control to respect the tradition. If you're looking for the most relaxed place in the world, check out the Villages in Florida. You can't move here unless there is at least one person over 55 in your home. And you'd have to leave behind any family members under 19. The most popular means of transportation in the villages is a golf cart. There are all sorts of free fun activities for the residents, so it's far from boring.
Here's a riddle. Which U.S. city is so loved that its name should be repeated twice? You guessed it, New York, New York. But the thing is, how much of New York do we really know? I'm talking about the city that lies under the city. Dare to join me on an underground tour of the Big Apple? Then grab a flashlight, it's about to get dark. We'll start in the heart of Manhattan, in the front of the Romanesque City Hall building. Believe it or not, beneath our feet lies New York's oldest subway station, known as the Old City Hall Station. It opened in 1904 on October 27th, a night of true celebration for New Yorkers. People were so excited, some of them spent the entire night riding the trains back and forth. Before this, urban dwellers moved around in carriages pulled by horses. No wonder the subway was such a hit. You might feel like a time traveler stepping inside the Old City Hall Station. The architecture is dazzling and one of a kind. They sure don't make subway stations like this one anymore. Fun fact, the Old City Hall Station would cost $6.2 million if it was built today. Back in the day, it had dozens of brass chandeliers hanging around. It was one of the few spots in town with functioning electricity. And oh, not to mention brand new multicolored tiled arches and stained glass ceilings you can still see today. Impressive, huh? If you decide to wander down the tracks, you might be in for a treat. Underground New York is as fascinating as the city above the ground. But one thing we usually take for granted is the behind the scenes of what the Big Apple needs to function. Down here, you might see one or two of New York's pneumatic mail tubes. These tubes were built back in the 1800s, and they were operational up until the 1950s. They were responsible for distributing people's mail through different post offices. Letters flew at an impressive speed of 35 miles per hour. That's almost as fast as a professional runner. It sure sounds like a useful system. But I have to say, it feels weird imagining people's correspondence flying around 15 feet underground. Back to street level. We'll wander around fancy Lexington and Park Avenues. If you look up, you'll see the famous Waldorf Astoria 5-star hotel. Many celebrities have stayed there, including John Lennon and Yoko Ono, as well as presidents such as FDR. This is why the hotel used a secret infrastructure to sneak people inside and out. Under the building, a tunnel known as Track 61 connected the Waldorf Astoria to Grand Central Station. The track was deactivated in the late 70s, but some people say Andy Warhol threw a party there in the 80s. I bet that was something. For the next part of our visit, we'll have to take the subway uptown. We'll get off at 125th Street and find ourselves on the scenic waterfront of Riverside Park. Here, you'll find abandoned tracks of an old metro line. If you follow the tracks, you'll get to an underground graffiti gallery, aka the Freedom Tunnel. The tunnel is named after a graffiti artist from the 80s who is commonly known as Freedom. While exploring these tunnels, we'll see over 40 graffiti pieces he painted over 15 years. There are spray paints of James Dean, Mona Lisa, and even a self-portrait of Freedom himself. Moving on, let's wander around the northern part of NYC for a bit. Walking in Van Cortlandt Park will feel like hiking upstate, but believe me, you're still in the city. Along the way, you'll encounter some big ventilation towers made of stone. These towers were once part of an old New York infrastructure. They make up the remains of what used to be the Croton Aqueduct. In the 1800s, the city's water supply flowed through a 41-mile-long underground tunnel, all the way from Croton River in upstate New York to Bryant Park in Midtown Manhattan. Oh yes, and I should probably tell you that Bryant Park wasn't a park. Instead, it hosted a colossal stone structure that looked pretty much like something ancient Egyptians would build. This 4-acre structure served as the city's water reservoir. It even had a pathway on top so that people could enjoy a nice afternoon stroll while looking at the reservoir's crystalline water. Now, all this exploring might have made you hungry, but don't worry, our next stop includes a yummy treat. We'll have to leave Manhattan and make our way to Brooklyn. In case you didn't know, New York City is made of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. Crown Heights, that's our stop. Would you believe me if I told you that beneath these streets lie caves full of aging cheese? How very Parisian of them. To get down there, you'll have to make your way through a century-old building that now works as an office space. Maybe wave hello to all those hard-working people and disappear in one of the stairways that will take you 30 feet below the ground. You won't need a flashlight for this one. The caves are bright and renovated and can hold up to 22,000 pounds of cheese. But hey, it might stink. That's the main reason cheesemakers decided to use underground tunnels to age cheese in the first place. After a bite or two of some delicious cheese, let's keep going. While still in Brooklyn, you might see tons of locals enjoying a sunny day in the McCarran Park pool. This pool is a huge attraction, being 3 times the size of an Olympic pool. As the NYC explorer you are becoming, you might even go for a swim. But hey, there's a much more interesting part to this attraction. The pool was built in the early 1900s, but it was shut down in the 50s. During this time, urban explorers discovered a network of underground tunnels right beneath the pool. And, of course, you can find a secret entrance and get a peek for yourself. There, you'll not only see the pool's filtration and heating system, but also a lot of graffiti from the time the site was abandoned. Neat! This question may sound weird, but have you ever seen a cow in New York? I sure haven't. Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Apparently, New York still has underground tunnels that were constructed for the transportation of cattle. Once New York started to flood with automobiles, cows became a burden for traffic. until a 200-foot-long cow passage was built below 12th Street to transport the livestock that was ferried over from New Jersey. These days, you won't be able to visit this place in person because the tunnel was most likely destroyed. But historians found blueprints proving its existence. To add to the list, archaeologists discovered a very peculiar fossil a while back. Now imagine peeling off the layers of the city's soil. First, at 15 inches, you'll find a layer of wires. I'm talking TV cables, electricity, and all that. Digging deeper, at 4 feet, you'll see water and sewage pipes. But then, at 15 feet down under the surface of NYC, diggers have found a fossilized shipwreck. The wreck is located right under Broad Street, where there was once shallow water. They believe the wreck dates back to the 1600s. It's 92 feet long and 25 feet wide. Oh, and that's not all. At the intersection of Bowery and Canal Street, engineers stumbled upon a room with its walls and ceiling covered in mirrors. And no one has managed to explain the existence of this bizarre place yet. Our Big Apple Underground visit is coming to an end, but we sure did more than just scratch the surface on this one. Before we finish, let's enjoy the best of what NYC cuisine has to offer, a good old bagel. Who knows, maybe next time we'll do Paris or even London. See you soon, explorer!
There are many myths around arguably the greatest structure ever built by humans, the Great Wall of China. Some say it's so grand that it's visible from space. Others claim that you can see it from as far as the moon. Other theories suggest that the builders of the wall were left inside. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but all these impressive stories are just myths. But even with those stories busted, the Great Wall of China is an impressive and truly breathtaking structure. So let me tell you its true story. Today, China is one of the most populated countries in the world, counting as many as 1.4 billion residents. It's also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. There is a theory that while the European continent, for example, was most likely reached by humans from Africa, China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. Some people believe that the Chinese civilization got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So now, the Great Wall of China. It's truly big even by today's standard, stretching for over 13,000 miles. To imagine it better, it's almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles. Or even a bit greater than the distance between the North and South Poles. Even in modern times, people have never built anything close to this big. Of course, it didn't take a day to build the Great Wall of China. 2? Keep going. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect themselves from invaders. Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BCE and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's border against attacks from the north. A trusted general directed the construction, enrolling a big group of workers, soldiers, commoners, and convicts. Back then, the wall was built of rammed earth and wood. In some places that were strategically important, the sections of the wall overlapped to provide maximum security. The walls were around 26 feet high on average. But the Great Wall didn't yet look like the construction we know today. Every next emperor would pick up the Big Wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used bricks to build it. Others moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added by Ming emperors. The watchtowers made it possible to communicate with other parts of the wall through smoke and fire messages. So, the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. The reasons why some parts of the wall have been standing for centuries and are still in good condition is glutinous rice flour. Turns out, this sticky rice mortar is almost like cement. It's very strong and waterproof, sealing the bricks so tightly together that even sneaky weeds can't grow between them. You may also notice that some bricks have writings carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So, in the case of some problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who should be held accountable for it. Recently, a research group has looked through official historical documents of the Ming Dynasty that ruled China from the 14th to the 17th centuries. They came across records of secret doors in the Great Wall, so they decided to find them. They used a flying robot to capture continuous centimeter resolution photos of the wall. They photographed 90% of the wall that was built during the Ming Dynasty and discovered the remains of over 220 secret doors along the wall. Some of them have a specific width and height that allows only one person to go through. Others are large enough to allow 2 horses to pass at the same time. Why are the doors there? Well, the Great Wall's main goal was to protect the country from the enemy. Building doors that could let the enemy in would undermine the whole point of having a wall. So, of course, the doors were secret passages. They perfectly matched the surroundings topographically, and the exit on the outside was camouflaged with bricks so that it was almost completely indistinguishable from the brick wall. The wall was never just a defensive wall, and it was never completely closed. It could be opened on demand. It was also a structure used for trade and commerce, communication between inside and outside the wall, and of course, for defense and spying. Some doors were used for trade with the other side. Through smaller doors, a person would sneak out to spy on the enemy that lived on the other side. The hidden gates were also useful for a sudden attack. As you remember, some gates were camouflaged with brick on the outside. The exit was so indistinguishable that the enemy had no idea exactly where it was located. The inside entrance for Chinese soldiers was hollow, so they could walk through the wall and break the camouflaged exit gate from the inside, starting their surprise attack. Now, even though the main point was to prevent outsiders from getting into the city, the wall wasn't too effective on that matter. It could still be climbed over or marched around. So the wall was being watched at all times, and the guards gave signals to the troops if they saw the enemy approach. Also, the wall provided more time to mobilize and bulk up the country's forces or lure the enemy troops into a difficult strategic position. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century. The wall lost its strategic and military importance due to technological advances. Over the centuries to today, only 8% of the Great Wall is in good condition, and the rest is damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace, due to both natural erosion and human damage. I guess you could say it's now just a pretty good wall. As you remember, the first parts of the wall were built out of rammed earth and wood. These are not the most unfailing materials if we're talking about thousands of years. Also, destructive farming methods have turned large areas into a desert and contributed to erosion. Also, many bricks were taken away from the wall in the last century to be used in building farms and houses. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 10 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. Since 1987, the wall has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site, highlighting that it has an outstanding importance to humanity. The wall is one of China's 56 World Heritage Sites, second place among countries with landmarks protected by UNESCO. Who's first, you ask? Well, the top spot, with 58 World Heritage Sites, belongs to Italy. And do you know that the wall isn't only a famous tourist attraction, but also the location of the Great Wall Marathon? It's a marathon that was established in 1999 and is one of the most challenging ones in the world. You guessed right, people run along the wall, including all the steps. There are 3 distances, so that participants can run a full marathon that is 26 miles, a half marathon that's 13 miles, or just have a fun run of 5 miles.
Tunnels, metro, underground systems, and even secret passageways to the houses of the rich and famous. Why else do we need tunnels, you may wonder? To hide. Many cities have underground tunnels and even underground doppelgangers. Now let's make it clear. Those passages are normally not connected, contrary to the popular rumor claiming that it was possible to get from Scotland to Turkey using underground passageways built around 5,000 years ago. I mean, it sounds insane even today. Imagine building it back in the day. These tunnels have an official name, the Erdstall Tunnels, and they were most likely built in the Middle Ages. However, we still don't have the exact information about the date. The highest concentration of those tunnels are in Bavaria, Germany, but there are many of them in Great Britain and France too. Erdstall tunnels, a unique type of earthen passage found globally, are characterized by their narrow, oval-shaped corridors and tight choke points, known as schlups, or slip-outs. Despite speculation, their purpose remains a mystery. However, some of those tunnels have fireplaces and even vents, which might mean those were used primarily for shelter. Dating back to the Middle Ages, possibly as early as the 12th century, Erdstall tunnels lack archaeological signs and historical records. So it's not a surprise that there are many rumors about their use. Some scientists are sure those were storage spaces, though their narrowness makes this impractical. Another idea is that they provided hiding spots for farmers during tribal raids. However, their single entry point raises doubts about their effectiveness in evading threats. Now, if you're feeling like Indiana Jones and want to venture into those tunnels, you're in luck. A few structures, like the Erdstall Radkoblücken in Austria, welcome visitors to explore these enigmatic structures. Most of them are closed to the public eye, though. The origins of Erdstall tunnels remain largely unknown, just like their real functions. And if you think, hey, it's the 21st century here, we can study pretty much everything, well, you're wrong. What makes these tunnels hard to study are the tight confines. Traditional surveying methods often prove inadequate in such spaces. To solve this problem, scientists use a handheld device that integrates an RGB camera, a gyroscope, and high-resolution depth sensors, allowing them to capture intricate details of the tunnels. They also use modern techniques like 3D surveying in hopes of uncovering the true origins and purposes of those tunnels. One hypothesis even suggests they may have been poorly conceived dwellings, abandoned when their inadequacies became apparent. Still, not everyone quite agrees with this idea. Other theories suggest they served spiritual purposes, while the most intriguing idea speculates that those tunnels may be remnants of extraterrestrial civilizations. Experts believe they may have been used for practical matters, such as granaries or hiding spots from looters. As we don't have exact info on who built it and when, it may be pretty much anyone, even a sloth. Nope, I'm not a lunatic. Sloths can build giant tunnels. Check this out. In 2009, a farmer in southern Brazil was driving his tractor through a cornfield when it suddenly sank into the ground. He quickly discovered he had broken through the top of an underground tunnel. When researchers came to investigate, they found a tunnel around 6.5 feet high and the same 6.5 feet wide, extending about 50 feet long right beneath the farmer's house. When they looked closer, they instantly saw deep claw marks on the walls. That was the proof the tunnel wasn't human-made. So that thing the farmer uncovered was a megafauna paleoburrow, a prehistoric tunnel dug by ancient creatures like giant ground sloths or giant armadillos from over 10,000 years ago. I know, it's hard to imagine those beasts, but let me help you. Take a hamster. Now, increase it to the size of an elephant. Don't forget, this 13-foot tall hamster could also walk on 2 legs. During their time, around 15 million to 10,000 years ago, many species of sloths and giant armadillos roamed the Americas, some even digging similar tunnels. Today, many of these tunnels are filled with sediment, though some remain clear, similar to the one the farmer discovered. This 2009 find sparked significant interest, leading to the discovery of over 1,500 paleo burrows across southern Brazil, making it the era with the highest concentration of such sites worldwide. But no one knows exactly why there are so many of them in southern Brazil. While some paleo burrows exist throughout South America, none have been found in North America, which is weird since those huge sloths roamed the entire continent. The exact purpose of these large tunnels remains a mystery, but scientists believe they may have served as nursing spaces, temperature regulation, or hibernation areas. Tunnels likely developed over centuries as successive generations of sloths and armadillos expanded them. Now, let's take a look at fugus. No, not the Japanese fatal delicacy, and no, not a town in New Guinea. To see them, we gotta travel to the UK. So fugus are underground structures too, but they don't look exactly like tunnels. They are dry stone structures. They look as if a cave had been decorated with stones from the inside. There are only around 15 of them found so far, and most of them are located in Cornwall. According to the estimates, those tunnels were built about 2,400 years ago, and they're still in pristine condition, which is truly fascinating. I mean, back in the day, people had no cool machinery whatsoever, yet their structures still last. And if you dare to buy an apartment today, well, chances are you won't be too happy about the quality. Going back to our fugus, there's nothing extraordinary about their supposed purpose. They could be used for spiritual purposes, as a place to hide, or a food storage. The latest application, though, is a bit weird. I guess it's not a secret for anyone that England is famous for its excessive humidity. And if you want to store your food properly, you gotta avoid the humidity at all costs. Otherwise, say welcome to mold and fungi. But ancient people weren't dull-witted at all, or they wouldn't have survived, and you and I wouldn't be around now. So they might have adapted those fugus to store just some products, those that already had natural molds in them, assisting in the preservation of perishable food, like milk, butter, and cheese. But hey, those are just speculations. The true reason why they were built remains unknown. What makes fugus unique is that they are intentionally built tunnels, not just excavated mines like those in Wales. They were crafted by digging deep trenches, lining them with stone slabs, covering them with capstones, and then filling over them, all of which took significant time and effort. Still, no matter how hard those were to construct, cities around the globe are often built over intricate tunnel systems, each unique to its location. For instance, Paris is famous for its extensive underground quarries, which were abandoned years ago, but still pose a risk of collapse in certain areas above. London boasts one of the largest tunnel networks in the world, including many that were specifically created for military purposes. In New York City, there are rumors of secret tunnels, while Los Angeles has old tunnels from the Prohibition era used for speakeasies. Many other cities also have their share of enigmatic tunnels, and surprisingly, Florida is no exception. It happened in the year 2011 in Ybor City. Near a former post office, flooding uncovered something weird, a section of an unknown structure. Back then, people didn't pay much attention to that, so it took another 7 years to discover something truly fascinating. This historic neighborhood was founded in the 1880s, but it remained unknown until 2018 that it also has a hidden tunnel network. We only learned of it because of renovation work. The exact purpose, of course, is unknown, but most scientists are pretty sure that they serve to connect to early gaming spots and the port of Tampa. Figuring out how extensive the tunnel network is tricky. In 2018, a historic home in Seminole Heights revealed locked doors leading to tunnels from the 1920s. One local even said he traveled through a tunnel for 20 minutes. Rumors suggest some tunnels connect to the Hillsborough River and Ybor City. Research is ongoing, but no new info has emerged yet.
The ancient city of Taposiris Magna is hidden on the northern coast of Egypt. These days it has very little of its former glory, but what lies beneath it may hold the secret to uncovering a famous mystery, that of Cleopatra, the most memorable Egyptian queen in history. The recently discovered tunnel is also known as a geometric miracle for its time. Excavations have uncovered a 43-foot-long structure below the ground, which is partially submerged in water. Its shape and construction technique are similar to that of the Eupalinos tunnel, another amazing ancient discovery. This one is located in Greece and was built by excavating simultaneously from 2 points, aiming to have them meet in the middle. The use of math and geometry to make this construction was astonishingly precise for those days, more so since it was built near a mountain. Archaeologists that have been working on the Taposiris Magna site since 2004 believe this tunnel may lead to the lost tomb of Cleopatra. The clues they found so far seem to back up this theory. For starters, the city and its temple were built by one of Cleopatra's ancestors, Ptolemy II. All the architecture seems to indicate it was dedicated to the ancient spirit Osiris and his queen Isis. Throughout her reign, Cleopatra did try to associate herself with Isis, so it may be no surprise she chose this location as her final resting place. Scientists have yet to pinpoint Cleopatra's tomb, but research continues with the help of modern technology. To study this location better, archaeologists have even used a special device called ground-penetrating radar. This tool allows us to analyze what lies beneath the ground without being intrusive. Since this tunnel is so old, research needs to be done very delicately. Seeing pictures of what's underground before you start digging is incredibly useful and has been done here since 2011. Finally discovering Cleopatra's tomb may help us piece together her story, especially what might have happened during the last portion of her life, which is still surrounded by mystery. We still don't know the exact cause of her passing. Some believe she may have let herself be bitten by a poisonous Egyptian cobra. Others have suggested that she was well accustomed to toxic substances, even hiding some in her hairbrush in case she ever needed it. But that's not to say she chose to use it on herself. We do have a lot of other interesting information on Cleopatra that's equally as impressive, like the fact that she had a stylist. Most of the images you've seen depicting this famous queen show her wearing black eyeliner. This look was put together by Airas, a woman known to have been her personal beautician. She traced the long line from her eyes to her temples, a makeup technique still used today to enhance the eyes. Airas was an important figure throughout Cleopatra's life, known also as her confidant and close friend. There are even theories that suggest Airas was there by her side when she passed away. Despite her well-thought-out looks, Cleopatra wasn't as pretty as she's described. Or at least, that's what recent research has pointed out. Sure, if we look at movies and modern imagery, she's depicted as this incredibly beautiful woman with symmetrical and delicate features. However, if we look at coins showcasing her image from back in the day, her looks are rather average. Her image on the coins might have been adjusted, too, to make the queen look stronger in the eyes of her people. So there is no trusted source available to confirm her image, but her description in most pieces of ancient literature speaks of her other qualities, like her voice and personality, not of her beauty. Cleopatra might have been the most famous Egyptian queen to this day, but she wasn't the first choice. She did have an older sister, Berenice, that was initially supposed to take the throne. Berenice passed away before she could do that, so Cleopatra took on the role and began investing in her education. She traveled throughout the country quite frequently, so she could become accustomed to her people and their needs. She was only 18 when the responsibilities were passed down to her, and immediately gained popularity because of her intelligence and education. Her taste in literature was quite good too. She was known to be a fan of Homer, the famed Greek philosopher and poet. Cleopatra loved to write as much as she loved to read. There are even claims that she wrote a book on medicine and cosmetics, but we have no evidence to this day that such work ever existed. Part of being a great leader back then meant you had to speak multiple languages. Cleopatra clearly understood that, and that's why she's rumored to have known many languages to varying degrees. Some archaeologists suggested she spoke Greek, Egyptian, and Ethiopian, as well as many Arabic dialects. She might have even spoken Latin, but there's little evidence to support this claim. She might not have had angelic looks, but Cleopatra was really careful with the way she looked, even with her diet. She was known to have enjoyed simple meals, including a variety of fish. Since she lived close to the Mediterranean Sea, it's really no surprise. As a treat, she liked to eat stuffed pigeons, which she also served to her guests. Other dishes on the menu included vegetables and fava bean soup. Fruits and nuts weren't missing from her diet either, and she was also a big fan of honey. Recently, a team of experts has even tried to recreate her famous perfume. Think of it like the ancient equivalent of Chanel No. 5. Cleopatra was known to be a fan of luxurious scents, which she believed could even influence how people treated her when they met. The basis of this scent is myrrh, a resin gathered from a local tree. Other ingredients added to the mixture were also found back in the day, like cardamom, olive oil, and cinnamon. The results may not be quite as delicate as the perfumes we know and use today. Its consistency was way thicker, and the scent lasted way longer. When she was at the height of her power, Cleopatra might have been the richest person in the world. Back in the day, she ruled over a territory that stretched across the Mediterranean, from modern-day Libya in the west through Egypt to Syria in the east. This is the largest territory ever ruled over by a woman. In today's currency, her worth might have been somewhere around $95 billion. The calendars we use today may have been introduced by Cleopatra herself. She presented the idea of leap years and leap days to Caesar, the Roman emperor she was known to have been close with. Taking her advice, Caesar made these adjustments part of the official Roman calendar. The ancient Egyptians already knew the year was longer than precisely 365 days. They discovered this by studying the brightest star in the sky, called Sirius, and concluded that a year is actually 365 1/4 days long. It was Elizabeth Taylor that famously introduced Cleopatra to pop culture when she played her in the 1963 film bearing the same name. Up until that point, it was the most expensive film ever made. It was originally supposed to cost somewhere around $2 million, but ended up costing a mind-boggling $44 million. That's mostly because of script and production issues. To make this iconic movie, producers created 79 sets from scratch, as well as over 26,000 costumes for the cast. Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra costumes alone cost somewhere around $200,000. Thankfully for the producers, the movie made headlines and was well received by critics, making it a box office success. A lot of people associate Cleopatra with another famous Egyptian ruler, King Tutankhamun, nicknamed King Tut. Surprisingly, apart from both of them being Egyptian pharaohs, they have nothing else in common. For starters, King Tut lived around 1,300 years before Cleopatra did, and there is also no connection regarding their ancestry. Cleopatra had Macedonian Greek roots, while King Tut was a native Egyptian.